Early indications coming out of the Mercedes camp point towards its new W15 Formula 1 car having got rid of the spiteful rear end the W14 had that hampered its progress last year. The mighty German outfit has been working hard on a major car revamp that it hopes will allow both Lewis Hamilton and George Russell to take the fight to the Red Bulls this season. But they aren't taking anything for granted as they head towards pre-season testing, because it knows that its chances of success depend entirely on how much of a step forward their opposition has made, as explained by technical director James Allison after revealing some positive early signs about the W15. When motorsport.com asked Allison how he would describe the current level of confidence within the team based on the promise from the simulator and feedback coming from their sim driver Anthony Davidson, Allison had this to say. It's impossible at this time of year to be anything other than apprehensive, coupled with excitement, coupled with frightened. Those are always the emotions that you feel. And I would imagine that even in Red Bull, after a year of such good performance, they will not be sleeping easy in their beds either, because no one knows what anyone else will deliver. However, what we do have some hope for is that some of the more spiteful characteristics of the rear end of our car will be a bit more friendly to us, and the handling of the car a happier thing. That's all in simulation, but nevertheless we've got reasonable grounds to believe that we've made some gains there. And that's the main caveat to take away from these comments. It's all in simulation. As we've heard them in the previous 2 years have many a comment to make or a headline grabbed from the so-called simulation data that they could see the 0 points would bring to their last 2 challenges. And it was always the question of could they unlock this performance in the real world, not just in simulation. And that's where heads began to roll at the team, with some key departures and firings taking place at the start of last season, which led to James Allison taking up his old position within the team. So again, it's a case of wait and see with our own eyes as to how the W15 is birthed on track and how it behaves. And then from there, we can start to make some detailed assumptions from the lap times as well as the car's general behavior out on track this coming February. Before we move any further with the video, if you're enjoying the content, please consider subscribing to the Racing Edge, as I'll be covering all 3 days of pre-season testing this year, and of course all of the Grand Prix. Right, back to the video. Moving away from whether they have or haven't fixed the car's handling issues, there are other areas of the car that would have been on their list of winter targets to improve upon for the 24 season. We've been given a few hints as to what some of those were, and whether they have managed to meet those said targets by Allison. These were more downforce, lighter components, and an increase in power from their power unit. On top of the handling, you've got all the normal housekeeping type stuff of just making it lighter, making it more downforcey, and hopefully getting a bit of uplift from the power unit side, with the calibration level tinkering that they're still capable of doing under these current rules. Whether it's enough, time will tell. But it's nevertheless going to be interesting because we saw some things we knew were problems. We have hypothesized what the reason for those problems were, and we fixed those reasons. It will be interesting to find out how accurate we've been with that diagnosis. Now, none of these target areas will come as much of a surprise, as these can be found pretty much up and down the pit lane, but how well a job you do at executing them will make the difference between going backwards, standing still, or moving forward in the pecking order. Take for instance the most dominant car in F1 history, the RB19. A lot can be said about that car, but there was one clear area the team knew they had to focus hard on during the off-season, more than perhaps a few other areas, and that was on the weight saving side of things. It's been rumoured that a massive difference between the RB19 and RB18 in terms of lap time came from weight saving alone. So collectively as a team, it's really important that you choose which areas to focus on the most with regard to the lap time benefit each area will bring you. One final thing Allison also alluded to was that it's not a given the teams will keep their advantage from one season to the next. This was clearly taking a slight aim at Red Bull, and he thinks that while it may be too early to judge Mercedes' own chances, F1's new ground effect regulations will make it hard for Red Bull to keep on improving. We hope we've done a good job with our new car, and we hope we've addressed some of the shortcomings that were so publicly on display with it last year. There is also just a little bit that nestles in the back of our heads, which is that the rules themselves have a much more sort of clear upper bounds to them in the amount of lap time these cars are capable of producing. It's a much more clear upper bound to them than the older generation of cars, which the more love you gave them and the more labour you put into them, the faster they got, seemingly without end. I think if you look at last year, you see from the start of the season to the end of it, although Red Bull's dominance was near complete and they didn't look vulnerable even up until the last race of the year, if you actually look at the bigger picture, this is the grid that is gradually compressing. So what's clear to me is that certain teams think there is an inevitable plateau within these regulations, while others don't believe that this will be the case, at least for the 2024 F1 season. And you can, in my opinion, look at these statements through a couple of different lenses. The first is that Mercedes are hoping this is the case with Red Bull, and that they can catch up to the sizable lead that they have, particularly in race trim throughout the 24 season. And they are essentially praying this is the case because they have realized they have a long way to go with the new concept they chose with the W15. Or, for the other side of things, where other teams such as McLaren are saying they see no signs of diminishing returns, who themselves have had quite a long time with their current concept. This means they know Red Bull are going to find somewhere near the thick end of a second, or a more reined back in approach would be a half a second. But either way, they believe there is a lot more potential from these cars that everyone needs to unlock. But either way, we should be in for a very exciting season ahead. Right guys, that's the video. Hope you've all enjoyed it. If you have, leave a like and leave comments down below. And I'll catch you all in another Formula 1 video.